Welcome to Bay Area Vista Brief. I'm Janice Edwards, and I'm so excited because today we are joined by renowned civil rights attorney and leader, John Burris. John, it's great to see you. It's been a few years, but I am
Been a while.
excited. It has been a
Yeah,
while, hasn't it?
been
Yes.
a while. I think it
And
goes back to Channel 4 days.
I know, I
Yeah,
know, I know.
yeah,
Too many decades to count, right?
yeah. Yeah. Lot of changes during those times. We've gone from here to now, long
Yes.
time. Yeah.
Exactly. And speaking of from here to now, first of all, congratulations. You just celebrated a milestone birthday. Do you want to share which birthday it was?
It's no secret.
Right.
There was 250 people there, so there's no hiding that. That was
Okay.
my 80th birthday, and
Congratulations.
it was quite a party. I never
Wow.
thought I would have to pay that kind of money or to celebrate that way. But once we got into it, I thought it was important for all the people who supported me down through the years to celebrate with me. And it was good.
Yes. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, congratulations on that. And we have another celebration coming up on August 29th. We're going to talk about in just a moment. But reflecting on 80 years now, what are your proudest moments professionally and personally as you look
I would
through those
say
decades?
professionally, there have been cases along the way that I felt I was making a real difference, or I was in cases where the whole world was against that particular person, and I fought for that person in light of all the negative publicity and kind of hatefulness that was generated around it. And I'll give you a couple case in points. I represented the cocaine mom years ago. You may remember this case. This is a lady who had the two babies born, and she was doing cocaine. She was on a binge, and ultimately she was charged with murder, 2 counts of murder. And I represented her at a time when I really thought that it wasn't murder, that she was an addicted person, and these were kind of miscarriages generated. But I did represent her at a time when there was a lot of hostility toward her, and we were able to get a good resolution. She didn't go to jail for murder. She did 90 days. She only had 1 count. The murder cases were dismissed. It was reduced. But I felt that I had taken on something that was socially very important. Likewise, a few years later, I represented a 6-year-old boy who was accused of attempted murder. This was 1996. And it was very, very an emotional case. The community out in Richmond asked me to come represent him because they thought that he was not being treated fairly. And I did. And the reason why it was important is that I knew that there had been white kids of a comparable age who had also committed a homicide and had not been charged with murder. And they had all been sent to social services, not in the juvenile system at all. So that was very important to me to demonstrate that this young black kid should not be treated differently than other kids. And it was a hotly contested matter. The DA and I fought as hard as people can fight, with 2 gladiators fighting. He was trying to convince everyone that he was going to teach this young boy the lessons of the society. And my view was, you got to come through me for that to happen. And so we fought. And I'm very proud of the work we did in that case. We were able to demonstrate that the kid was not mentally competent to stand trial. Even though the prosecution had their own expert that said he was, we demonstrated he had not been. He was not competent. He was a typical 6-year-old boy. And at the time, I had a 6-year-old boy. I knew he wasn't competent. And in fact, only thing the kid remember, there was this tall man in court. He probably didn't know my name at the time. So that was a very important case. And those are non-police cases, of course. But of course, I've been involved in a lot of very significant police cases. As we all know, I was involved in the Rodney King case. I tried that case, and that was one of the first major cases of police brutality that was seen by the entire world because it was on video cameras. And so trying that case in Los Angeles at the time with Milton Grimes was a very important milestone for all of us. And my career from there has taken over, and I've gone to many, many police cases, and it's become sort of my calling card, if you will, to represent people who've been either killed or abused or in some way mistreated by the police.
Yes. Do you know whatever happened to that 6-year-old boy?
I do know what happened to that 6-year-old boy. He's like a fully grown man now. He has
Okay.
his own family. He lives in another city. There was an expose done recently by a person from Channel 7, and she did go and talk to him, and he did not remember the case at all. Unfortunately, the byproduct of that case is I did see. And that young boy, that baby at the time, had grown to be a man, and he has no brain, cannot take care of himself. He really is a person who belonged in a hospital for disabled children. But the parents, to their credit, have maintained custody of him, even though he is a person that's in substantial need. I will say I just came back from Pocatello, Ohio, Idaho, where I was there for 3 days. And I represented a boy who had been shot and killed by the police, who was autistic, nonverbal, literally cannot communicate at all. And the police shot him under very, very questionable circumstances. And we were able to represent him with that same kind of zeal. I did get a substantial verdict for the family, but at the same time, the kid's dead and the family's suffering. Now, the family were taking care of him. Even though he was nonverbal, he would have these bad moments where he would be very aggressive, but they could communicate with him. Unfortunately, the police were not trained on how to deal with an autistic kid or man and such. They treated it like it was a regular old police case, guns blazing, coming into the situation, and shot the young man down before he even had a chance to for them to try to communicate with him, even though there were people in the neighborhood and in the yard who could have done so. But those are the kind of things that I get myself involved in, that I'm very much happy and pleased that I can do it even at this age.
Well, and I know it makes such a difference for everyone involved. You mentioned the police coming in, guns blazing. We seem to see all too many cases of that these days. There used to be a time when I thought they were supposed to try to wound someone if the person was dangerous, but we're not seeing that. And especially it seems to be with this current administration and ICE. There's so many cases like that. What are your thoughts about what needs to happen to change some
Well, I
of
think
what we're seeing?
ICE is in fact changing the environment totally. There's been a lot of issues around police misconduct issues. I've certainly been at the forefront here, but there are people like me all around the country. And we are basically have been holding the police accountable, and surprisingly, so has been the federal government. Under the Bush administration, not specifically, but in the Clinton administration and the Obama administration and somewhat of the Biden administration, there were real efforts on the part of the federal government to hold police departments accountable. There was a pattern and practice section that they could utilize, and they were really whipping departments into shape. Then you have people like myself who also are bringing cases, some of them individual cases, some of them pattern practice cases. Pattern practice cases, I've done here the Oakland case and the Antioch case. I was in San Francisco, and those cases make a big difference. However, since the Trump administration has come in, many of the cases that Biden and Obama and Clinton and even Bush to some extent had the labels and controls over the police department, they were totally wiped out. What happened is the Trump people came in and withdrew all the police from all the DOJ lawyers from those cases. And those cases are now totally out of control. Now, they couldn't affect my cases because I didn't have federal control in those cases. So I had no control over Oakland, or some control over Antioch, but not over the portion of the case we had done. So in many ways, the Trump administration has given police departments, and certainly ICE, a free rein. We have been able to control the police departments where we have people much more so than we have ICE, because ICE is like a police agency that's for the president, and you can see how they're just out of control with wearing masks and no badges. I'm involved in some of those cases out in Minnesota, and some of those cases in New York, and it's just outrageous how these people feel that they are out of control, or they are with impunity. They can do whatever they please. And it is a horrible situation and a dangerous one. And I certainly fear for if no control is placed over ICE over the next half of this Trump administration, that things could get a lot worse. Because if they don't have any real more constraints on them than just the president, which is no constraint at all, then I think law enforcement by ICE will become even more outrageous, and in that case dangerous, and there'll be more deaths and more arrests unlawful arrests.
How do you advise citizens to navigate this, especially many times their rights are not respected. But have
Well,
you
I can only say there's
some
two levels
advice?
here. Yeah,
Okay.
ICE is one area that is totally arbitrary what they're doing now. I mean, they're like snatching people off the streets, people who are here waiting for asylum hearings and all. They're taking those people as well, who are basically here by the status that they're in. But ICE does not respect any of these statuses. And so people are being snatched off the street, taken to faraway lands, and more importantly, put into prisons that are paying prisoners. These are private profit prisoners. So all we're really doing is for the government is taking these people off the streets who had jobs and were making money, taking them to another place, putting them in jail where the people who are operating them, they're making money. And they're all part of the president's team, if you will. So it's a huge, huge financial thing that's taking place. And I don't see a real end to that in the very near future. Now, in terms of the police, everyone has their constitutional rights. They really, I don't think that they're being not taken care of because of ICE. I think they're not being done because departments do these things. There are officers in departments who are out of control. And so the object is you have to sue them and you have to hold them accountable. And from that, you will, the political people then have to take over from there. Unfortunately, in a lot of places, the political people are afraid of the police. They're afraid of the police because they don't want to be viewed soft on crime. They want to be viewed as protecting the police. And the police have a wonderful game that they play. If you don't do it, if you don't protect us, we just won't do law enforcement work. And so therefore that scares people. That's the blue flu that occurs from time to time. So it's a challenge. It's a real, real challenge. And all we can ever do is we need more people like myself, frankly, who are not
Yes.
afraid to sue the police and sue them. And you can then keep control. Now, what is happening in the urban areas, we have lawyers to fight these people. The problem is when you go out to small towns away, they're not used to having police lawyers coming in and prosecute the police. And so they kind of get a free ride on what they're doing. Now, we're out in some of these small counties a lot more so. And it's shocking to them. I'm up there in Pocatello. They've never seen a black lawyer. you know, but then
Shaw.
shocking all. But at the same time, because of cases I've been involved in, I was treated very well. There's no
Yes.
treated with a great deal of reverence by everybody,
Yes.
including the defense lawyers. So you do have that from a reputational point of view. But they're not used to being called into question either.
Mm.
They're not used to being challenged in terms of what they do. But as you know, you can't get anything done unless you challenge, because the
Right.
status quo will remain the status quo until someone says it's not acceptable.
Yes.
And unfortunately, I've been involved in cases where I'm saying it's not acceptable. And that's probably why I'm being honored so much these days. It's like surprising. It's embarrassing at
So,
times.
well, it's so well deserved.
Yeah.
And speaking of being honored, so on August 29th, Aaron Goodwin, who was one of your clients, is hosting an event. Tell us what you can about what people can look forward to at this event. It's at Holy
Well,
Names.
Aaron has had this idea that he wanted to honor me since the movie came out last year,
Hmm.
the
For those who don't
documentary.
know, explain about the movie. Hmm.
It's a documentary about me,
Hmm.
about my life. It's called John Burris, Godfather of Police Litigation. That title came from Judge Henderson, who was the judge on my writer's case, and he was
Yes,
commenting upon that.
the
And
Oakland
so he
Riders.
called
Hmm.
me the Godfather of Police Litigation. That became a touchy, catchy phrase, and that became the title of the documentary. And the documentary kind of goes through my life as a police lawyer, going back to when I first got the idea, before I even met you, when
Hmm.
I was living in Chicago. And in
Oh,
Chicago, I got involved in police stuff, particularly those interviewing people who had been beaten up by the police. That became sort of a kernel in the back of my brain as something I might want to do. I come back to California. I'm from California. I came
mhm.
back to California after my stint in Chicago. And after a period of time working with Dave Alexander and LSU, I decided to go out on my own. But I went out on my own for this express purpose of being a civil rights lawyer. You probably were not out here, and you went out here in '79, right? You were not
Yeah.
out here. Well, I did the Melvin Black case in '79. Melvin Black was a 14-year-old kid who was shot multiple times by the police as he's run away. I was hired at the time to be the private investigator to investigate the circumstances of the shooting. Lo and behold, surprise to most, I said the pleading was unlawful and wrong. And that sort of planted the seed in my brain as to what I wanted to do. And so shortly thereafter, within a couple of years, I decided to go on my own and start this practice. And the practice was doing civil rights work. I did criminal defense work for a long time as well, but basically, I always viewed myself as doing civil rights work. And so that's what I've been doing all these years, and taking on cases that I thought that were important to take. Sometimes little small cases, which most people don't believe that I do, but I do, and I have done, because I have a strong belief that even little cases have negative impact on people's lives. Because if
Yes.
you get arrested by the police and you get a record, particularly with the police, and you didn't do anything, it will scar your employment history. It will make it very difficult to get certain kind of jobs. So it's important not to let those cases slide by. And I've been very adamant about those cases. So I've been fortunate in that sense. Because I've been in good health too, that allowed me to fight these people.
And we're so glad that you have been in good health. Now,
Yeah.
one of the cases recently, last year, decided was the Antioch Police Department and police reform there. What's happening at this point with that?
Okay, that was a very significant case because there was a cabal, if you will, within the department of people who totally disrespected the rights of the community. Racial slurs, homophobic slurs, gender-based slurs, cultural slurs were all part of how they communicated amongst each other and against the people. And they would have dog situations, dog bites, canines, run canines, and they would kick and beat people, and they count them as trophies. If the dog bite person got a trophy tonight, bit someone, that's a trophy, and he'd line them up. And they keep track of, one guy says that I kicked the guy like it was a soccer ball. 4 people from that group of Antioch police are in prison now for their misconduct. We were able to rewrite all the policies within the department and pretty put in things to try to check and balance in ways they had not done before. And this was extraordinarily important. And did a lot of stop data like we did in Oakland, stop data where we tried to say, look, let's find out if you're disproportionately stopping people without probable cause or reasonable suspicion, because we know that's how you hurt people's reputation and stop it. And it's hurtful to people to be stopped and handcuffed and you haven't done anything. And you're just being stopped because of your racist background. Now, Antioch is an interesting town because it once was a blue-collar white boy town, totally white. So the integration has taken place over the last 20 years, and there's been significant resistance by the people who lived there initially, and many moved out. Blacks have moved in, like classic redlining stuff, and certainly on certain portions of the town. So it has had a challenging history. Several years ago, they had an open housing question about how they were treating people in housing, open housing. I've been involved in the police issues for a number of years. In fact, they gave me an award last week out there. And one of the
Congratulations.
things they had on the board in Contra Costa, they had 5 of my death cases that I had done recently in that town.
Yeah.
And so I'll tell you that mental health issues has been a big issue for me because I've had a lot of cases where mentally impaired people, for whatever reasons, have been shot and killed by the police because the police have not taken time to try to reduce the tension, to de-escalate. I always say you cannot treat a mentally impaired person and talk to them the way you do regular other people because they're not computing the same way. They're not seeing the same thing. And so you're going to rouse them by yelling and screaming at them and pointing your guns at them, putting your motorbikes at them, having your horses. All these kinds of things should not be done when you're dealing with mentally impaired people because you will arouse them and next thing you know, they're going to charge you and you'll wind up killing them. And you didn't have to do it if you'd slowed the situation down, thought about it differently. Just like this case I just finished. They didn't know how to talk to this autistic kid. But if they knew, they would never have been yelling and screaming at him. And they would have tried to find out from some family member what's going on with him. They would have immediately found out that he had the mind of a 5-year-old. If you have a mind of a 5-year-old, you don't talk to that person the same way you talk to a 17, 18-year-old who you think is normal or you might think is just drunk. So these are kind of tactics that police have to learn in dealing with cases. Sometimes they learn them and they don't follow them because being a police officer is not an easy job, but you do have to have different kinds of skills. And one of those skills important
Immediately
is
assess a situation.
verbal skills.
Mhm.
Verbal skills. People who survive best know how to talk to people,
So it's like a
as you know.
culture war too that you're talking about. I mean, when you're
You're always fighting about the culture within a department.
okay.
When I first started this work, the question was, who places the police? Not the police. So
Mm.
then over the time years, I've been involved in the police and the police. And that has caused them to make adjustments within the department. But that's not in all departments. A town like Vallejo, the police department is totally out of control and it's been out of control. And because the city itself is afraid of them. And the union is powerful. We did the Riders case in Oakland. The union did not interfere with us. They did not stop us from doing what we were trying to get done. Now, the police officers themselves did because they continued to engage in scandals. But the union itself was not involved in trying to prevent it. But the officers themselves just kept doing things. We kept having different problems we had to solve, even in the midst of the Riders case. So much of
Wow.
which is talked about in the documentary.
Yes, the documentary is going to be fabulous, and that's at Holy Names, August 29th. And we invite everyone to come to join you there. And before I let you go, you've talked about a lot of professional milestones. Personally, what's been most meaningful to you as you reflect on 80 years?
Aside from the best I can say right now is my wife. I'm
Mhm.
presently married to Cheryl Amano, who's a retired professor from North Carolina Central Law School.
It's
But I
always
was
nice
married
to see
before.
two lovebirds because you clearly have such a strong connection.
We do. We do. It was perfect. I couldn't imagine something like this happening to me, given I come out of a macho situation. No, I could not imagine. But I do have kids, and I have grandkids. I have great grandkids. And Cheryl and I have worked really hard, and she in particular, in working with the grandkids and the kids themselves. We try to spend as much time as we can. This past summer, we've had 3 sets of grandkids come for a week or so each during the summer, and they've had a good time. We try to make it an annual event. Then we have grandkids here, who we on Mondays we pick up and take to school. Well, we've always had some issue where they come to spend time with us during the week, school week. So that's really been very, very rewarding. Now I have some of my kids are very successful too, and so I'm proud of that. But I'm actually very most proud of the fact that I have been able to do a lot of good things for people. We have a mentoring program that Cheryl and I do every year. That once a year we bring. She takes the girls, I take the boys. These are high school boys, high school kids, and I bring in. This year we had 80 men, women, and girls at the house. On the last Friday of July and on the first Friday of August, I had the same amount of men and boys. And I've done this for 16 years. So I've always had community support. I sponsored baseball teams for years, well, and with boys, and I've always tried to share. I've mentored a lot of lawyers. That's a big thing for me,
Yes.
spreading the knowledge, and preparing for the next generation. And I always look. I know that the jig is going to be up soon. At some point, I like to stay as long as I
Hopefully
can.
not too soon. Yes.
Yeah, I hope so, not too soon. I had my parents both made it to 90. I figured at least should get that. But that's not a guarantee. But the important part is that I've always extended a helping hand to help young lawyers to learn. And you see you see a Dante Pointer and a couple other people out here whom I've taught down through the years who are now wonderful lawyers. And more importantly, they're the ones that are going to carry on. Because when I started doing the work I'm doing, there wasn't other people doing it. And so I had to learn it pretty much on my own, but I also brought other people along as well. And so the important part for me is the legacy of having created footprints for others to follow, and that they don't make the same mistakes that I had to make, the learning curve. And that's been helpful to the new lawyers, the younger lawyers who followed, is that they didn't start, out in the field somewhere. They started on base. It's up to them to go further. But that's
Yes.
really my true legacy for the community is by helping other people do the work. Because historically, you only can do what you can do, but somebody else had to carry it to the next level. And as I came up and I watched the lawyers, I watched who was doing what. They weren't doing exactly what I was doing, but I was seeing that they were aggressive hard-fought people. And I met other lawyers in Chicago the same way. So I had a way to look at what other lawyers were doing and then figure out what I wanted to do. Now, other lawyers weren't doing this, certainly black lawyers, but I wanted to do it because I saw how it affects the black community more so. And so I've been very significant about helping them, even though they may not know I'm helping them all that much, but I've helped them a lot.
Well, you certainly have. And even this event is designed to provide scholarships. And I mentioned that tickets are available at EventBrite.
Mm-hmm.
And it's wonderful that you're being honored and you continue to give back. Who was a lawyer that you admired growing up that you tried to emulate?
The lawyer that I've come to appreciate initially was Clint White, Justice White. But Clint White was the criminal defense lawyer of my generation when I was a boy. And we'd heard about this guy from Oakland. And so when I grew up, I ultimately gravitated toward him and saw what he did and how fabulous he was. But he was doing criminal defense work. So then I became close to Henry Ramsey and Judge Henderson and Willie Brown. These were guys I all looked up to as people who were trying to make a social conscious decision different. Now, interesting, I chose a path totally different from all they were doing. But that's because, I'm a strong believer in Robert Frost, the poem, The
Oh,
Road
yes,
Less Traveled.
road,
That's
yes.
my favorite, and that's been my guiding
Right.
force. And I did go through these other roads and went down these roads, but I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy. Even though I was doing it, I wasn't happy. And so I
Right.
finally came back, looked down the road, police stuff. Nobody said you could do this. Are you crazy? And I said, no, I'll find out. And I did it. And it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And so I'm really pleased that I made that choice. That's the one thing I can say is I did it the way when Frank Sinatra said, I did it my way and
Yes.
when I wanted to do it. And I made enough money so I can live. I don't have to work. That's the other thing. I don't have to work. That's the
And
important
that is
thing.
wonderful too. Yes, you took the
Mhm.
road less traveled, and that has made all the difference.
Made
John
all the
Burris,
difference in the world to me.
wonderful to connect with you. Thank you so much. We are
Well, thank you.
honored to have this time with you and excited about one more well-deserved honor that's coming up for you on August 29th. So thank
I'll
you
say one
again.
additional thing. Today I was notified that the NAAC statewide has nominated me for the Legacy Hall of Fame Award for the state of California and Hawaii.
Congratulations. Wow.
Today,
Breaking news. Wow.
breaking news.
Congratulations. Yes, they
Yeah,
keep
marvelous.
coming. So
Yeah,
well deserved. And we
yeah,
celebrate you and thank you for continuing to champion those who, without your help, would not be represented. And representation is so crucial. So thank you so much. And we thank you for joining us here for Bay Area Vista Janice Edwards TV. We'll look forward to seeing you next time. Join us again
absolutely.
then.